Hello, and welcome to this week's second episode of Fun Facts with Liam. And this is about one of the many people tied to the Cray twins, the infamous London Gangsters, made even more famous by the twins Gary Kemp and Martin Kemp, out of those of you that are old enough to be into Spandau Ballet or just into them in general, from Spandau Ballet, when they did the first biopic film of the Cray twins in 1990, which you can always watch back on ITV4 or wherever, and maybe BBC America and so on, depending where you live. And 2015's Legend, where Tom Hardy played both of the Cray twins. But this is about, one of their old mates, Mad Frankie Fraser, who was known for being a bit of a... I mean, I suppose this could go in bad blokes. Maybe I'll put it in the playlist. History Boys Bad Blokes. I'll put the the link in the description to that as like a little side reference. But his background was quite diverse. He was like an East End gangster through and through. He was born in Denmark Hill in South London. I can't remember if it's South London or East London. But what would I know? I mean, to quote Lenny McLean from Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, which I still haven't watched, even though I like Guy Ritchie's movies. I'm a northern monkey, so what would I know? But his old man, and he talked about in one of the there's a biopic film you can catch on YouTube, which I may give a link to. Yeah, I'll do it. Where he talks about his dad being Canadian, who was half like Yellowknife or something. Basically to narrow it down, a merry Indian, or Injun, as like I say, as John Fitzgerald brackets Tom Hardy also would say. And his mother was half Norwegian and half Irish. But other than that, he was known for being, in and out of jail, in and out of prison, hostels and all that kind of stuff throughout his formative years, and being feared in London's criminal underworld still quite long after the Cray twins and the Richardson gang, led by Charlie Richardson, had either been dismantled, dead, or just gone into hiding, or have died in prison or something, basically. So that's pretty much all there is to say regarding Mad Frankie Fraser's father. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, blah blah blah, and I'll see you in the last 2 episodes of this week. Hello and welcome to the penultimate episode of Fun Facts with Liam. And this one, I reference this show a lot, as I do The Sopranos, but there's a lot of historical stuff to kind of chinwag about, and that's another HBO show, of course, Boardwalk Empire. Now, those of you that are fans of it, you may have seen that in... pardon me. I've just finished my supper. Jacket taters with chili con carne and a couple of Irish sausages. Anyway, yeah. In the first season, Jimmy Darmody meets an up-and-coming Al Capone, where he's still with Johnny Torrio's group. Al Capone, and this locale-wise, I suppose, is sort of related to the bloke I'm going to be talking about. Is that, Al Capone, if you know his story, he came from Brooklyn and then he moved up north to Chicago and joined the 5 Points gang as a barman at a brothel run by Johnny Torrio and Big Jim Colosimo, who was Johnny Torrio's boss at the time, and then he got whacked in the show as well by Frankie Yale, another Italian gangster who was actually called Francesco Aioli. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, there's a couple of there's a bit in one of the episodes where Jimmy goes to Chicago, works as the token non-wop, as it were, I suppose. When they're having neighborhood disputes with Irish gangsters and Greeks, the Irish gangsters were encroaching on the Greek territory because that the area of Chicago that they were warring over was Greektown, as you of course may know, those of you that have watched it all the way through. But when they've done all the business, Al Capone keeps kind of taking the piss out of, or making light of Jimmy's World War I service. And he mentions he was in France, and eventually it comes to a point where Jimmy humiliates him right back, saying that, there was no Lost Battalion in France, but there was actually a gangster that is notorious for being actually hailed in a 1920 newspaper report, not too long after he was killed, Edward Monk Eastman, who was a New York gangster, mobster, whatever, same thing, who led a gang of cronies called the Eastman Gang, and he'd been, he was already into middle age when he was, when he served, I suppose. He would have been. He was born in 1875 and died in 1920. Like I said, it was death. Sorry for the umming and ahhing. I sound like a valley girl. But he was already notorious in his 30s for being in mob wars in 1901 and 1902 and pretty much all of the early 1900s, and then when America entered World War One, he was right there. Very useful and valued for his for being, a good shot and overall hard bastard. So pretty much comparatively, Al Capone did the stolen valor kind of thing, I suppose. Would it be stolen valor? Yeah, he lied about it, so it'd be stolen valor. There's other things that get you done for or tied with the whole stolen valor thing. You know, not counting, uh, of course, the recent news with that very unwell gentleman, I suppose, that from my side of the pond, with his medals, and even going so far as as to do ceremonies at castles and military state buildings or whatever they would have been. But yeah, Eastman actually did serve. I mean, Al Capone outlived him by 20, 28 years, but because he was killed in a gang war. But I mean, Eastman was killed in a gang war, but Eastman actually served and came back from World War One. Probably a war even more awful, probably in some ways than the Second World War. So yeah, that was the. I mean, I'll put the references in there as well, of course, where you know people have reported on it as well. But yeah, this was a kind of I think the theme in the back of my mind is inspiration. So that this was inspiration, and I was kind of mulling over, previous day and day before, um, what what baddies have they actually served their country technically. So yeah, that's it for the penultimate episode of Fun Facts with Liam of this week, and of course, fourth one is going to be an absolute belter. Hello and welcome to episode 40. I'm going to be talking about Al Capone's oldest brother, Ralphie, who I found out about in the great show Boardwalk Empire, where Al Capone was brilliantly played by versatile fellow northerner, not a Yorkshireman, kind of from Merseyside way, from Kirkby, not technically Liverpool, but just outside, near enough, who played, for those of you who've seen this shot, Shane Meadows, This Is England, series, This Is England, 86, 90 maybe, based off a continuation of the original This Is England film, where he was Andrew Combo Gascoigne, who was a skinhead. But yeah, the Capone brothers. There was it all brought to the kind of, I guess, front and center in season 2, 3 of Boardwalk Empire, where it was Dominic Lombardozzi as Ralphie. You lot might know, all the Marvel fans out there might know him from as the Kingpin's dad in Daredevil and Punisher, and there was Frank Capone, who was killed by Chicago police in 1924, real life event happened there. May have been a conspiracy, may have been whacked on purpose, or there was some kind of workers' union riot to do with Faraday electric irons, as addressed in Boardwalk Empire, and he was played by Morgan Spector, who was also a Chechen thug in the underrated film The Drop, which starred Tom Hardy also played Al Capone in Capone. Shame it wasn't really Stephen Graham, as I said in a previous video. That would have been good. That would have been really like suitable if you've been binge watching Boardwalk Empire like I did for a while, where Spectre was, like I said, getting back on my original train of thought, previous train of thought, where he was, he was a Chechen. He was one of the Chechen thugs in it, the drop was, I think, James Gandolfini, aka Tony Soprano, his very last film that he managed to do. And also Ralph Capone was played by Al Sapienza, who was, speaking of The Sopranos, he was Mikey Palmicha in that series for one season, but a memorable character. And his wife in Capone was actually played by Catherine Narducci, who is Artie Bucco's wife, funnily enough. But Ralph, his nickname, he was known as Bottles, and it's not because he was involved in the bootlegging stuff. I mean, he was, but it's because he worked at a bottling plant. So that's kind of all there is to say about Ralph Bottles Capone, apart from all the stuff earlier. So remember to like, subscribe, comments are always open, and you get the gist. So I'll get on with doing the final episode of this week. It's going to be a belter, as Bradley Walsh, who presents The Chase, says. I've been watching that. I tend to put it on when there's bugger all on and I can't be arsed flicking through the channels. So I'll see you in the next one. Cheerio.